off, you're already a step up from many of your peers because you have a class in industrial organizational psychology and you have amazing scholars that are teaching you industrial organizational psychology. And many universities still do not offer IO Psych as a course or as a program. If you are in a school that has an IO Psych program or has professors that teach it, start talking to them as soon as possible. Ask them about what they do in the field. If they're applied, maybe they have some connections to internships you could get involved in. If they're researchers, then they could maybe involve you in their research. And these are things that all graduate schools look for. IO psychology is one of those rare psychological disciplines where getting a master's gets you really good jobs. In many psychological disciplines, you have to have a PhD. Getting a master's can get you a really good job as an HR employee or even as a consultant in some settings. So getting that experience early to find out what it is you like and getting that experience for your resume to be able to then apply to graduate school successfully is definitely a recommendation I would make to you.
I think sometimes students see selection as a bit of a kind of a technical cookbook kind of thing, like, oh, here's what you do, here's your steps. And I don't think they always realize that, how important it is. It's the point at which you decide who's in the organization and who's not, who's going to be an employee. And those decisions are decisions that people have to live with a long time. It's really important to think about it, not just from the organization's perspective of, oh, if we hire somebody who's not going to work out, who's going to be unhappy here, that's going to affect all of us, but also from the perspective of people who you reject, people who say, no, this isn't the right job for you. That can have long-lasting effects on the people as well. So trying to look at both the applicant side, what's their experience going through this hiring process? Have you treated them politely, respectfully? Are they walking away with a bad feeling about themselves? That kind of thing, as well as on the other side.
I would just say whether or not they choose to be industrial organizational psychologists, the things that they're learning, if they really pay attention to it, if they really try to understand why human beings act the way they do, that is something they can use in any profession they go in. If you're going to be a medical doctor, being able to understand what is going through the mind of your patient, and if you need that patient to do something that may hurt, but it's in their best interest, if you understand how to communicate a message, and you'll get that from lessons in psychology. Like, for example, the first thing you want to do is to treat them fairly. You want to give them an opportunity to speak and to be heard and then reflect back. And then you want to introduce the message in a particular way. If you really pay attention to what you're learning in psychology, then regardless of whether you're an IO psychologist or you're an economist or you're a medical doctor or you choose to run for business, you will be more effective and you will have better relationships with people. So I'd say, don't just take the class and throw it all away afterwards. Take the class and really think and apply it to your interactions with your partner, or when you're speaking with your parents, or when you're hanging out with your friends. You'll be surprised at how these lessons actually can lead to more effective behavior in your personal life.
So I wish that all of the students of applied psychology, of industrial organizational psychology, I wish that they would all become members of SIOP, which is the Society for IO Psychology. And I wish that they would all come to the conference and be energized and inspired and informed by the thousands of scientists and practitioners who are in our society nationwide, who can teach you and learn from you about everything that's relevant to psychology and work. And I hope that that all the students consider doing that. And I'm just going to add another piece, another idea that's really important for potential IO psychologists, and that's that I would tell you not to be afraid of statistics. Statistics are your friend, and they will help you understand the world around you, and they will definitely help you in IO psychology. And so those are the two things I would wish for students learning about IO psychology. First, check out SIOP, the Society for IO Psychology, at www.psyop.org. And also, don't be afraid of statistics.
In general, I will tell them, follow your passion. Like I said earlier, I've developed my passion for IO psychology in 11th grade, which might be unusual. But, follow your passion. That's the first thing. And so that's my first advice to undergrads. The second piece of advice is, seek opportunities that are, in psychology that are beyond clinical in the usual type of psychology that you hear on the TV, the Dr. Phil's and people that Oprah invites. Learn about psychology at work. It's an opportunity to learn about a science that affects people at work and have a lot of impact in careers, a lot of impact in developing individuals, teams, and organizations. So again, my second piece of advice is read broader. If you're interested in psychology, read about the different fields and see which ones generate the passion, and then they just follow the passion. The third thing is whether we like it or not in psychology, you have to get a PhD by and large. That doesn't mean that a master's is bad. It's just that usually I tell my students get a PhD because the PhD gives you more options. You can be an academic, you can be in practice, you can be a consultant, you can be work for the government, you can work for an industry, a particular corporation, and so forth. So the PhD gives you a little more flexibility. But at the end of the day, is what is it you like to do, and just follow it.
Yes, I think what I want to say to students today who are considering a career path in IO psychology is that if you want to work in the field of talent management or human resources, and you want to be equipped with understanding how data and empirical informations can inform business decisions, it's the right field. And what I'm learning more and more today, CEOs, vice president of talent management, vice president of talent acquisition, they are starting to look to experts who understand how to take data and information and present it in a way that informs good decisions about business, hiring decisions, promotion decisions, decisions about systems in the organization. This is where things are going. And if you go into this field, you're going to be equipped with understanding how to approach real world business problems from a data perspective, from an analytics perspective. And this field helps prepare you for that.
Sure. Well, I think it's an exciting opportunity. It's an exciting field at an exciting time. I think as more and more data come in, I do see a really prime example, a really prime opportunity for IO psychologists to really play a role to really help make sense of all the data that are coming in. Is it being used in an appropriate way? And all the same skills that we've developed and are being developed in psychology programs, both undergrad and graduate, around research design, hypothesis testing, analysis. All those same skills can be very easily applied to, yes, it's a larger amount of data, but a lot of those same core skills apply. So I'd certainly bring that in as a key implication for someone considering entry to the field. I think extending that a bit further, some of the more advanced analytic models in terms of predictive analytics and some of the big data techniques that take into account larger, more diverse data sets. Unstructured data has also been a trend where there's been a much stronger incorporation of text data, open-ended data. And so some of the analysis techniques that are associated with text analysis, I think, will become increasingly important. And really model building, so how to start putting together a model of behavior at an individual level that can affect the health and outcomes at an organizational level. So again, a lot of those have their roots in some of the core foundational principles in psychology and statistics, in research design. I'd also bring in the customer perspective that individuals currently in school and will be entering the workforce bring, because the role of the customer has really been taken so that it hadn't been before. So as a consumer of a company's products in a way, or as recognizing that your peers, as you're going through an undergraduate program or a graduate program, those are peers that are going to be working for these corporations or applying to these corporations. So I think bringing in that voice of the customer, or in some cases the candidate for these roles, I think it's important to recognize that you've got a very close connection to those perspectives that you bring yourself and through others that you work with. So regardless of what role you end up in, if you were to end up in a a role as an internal practitioner of IO psychology. You're working for a company that has as its customers both the consumers who are actually buying the company's products, as well as employees. So becoming an employer of choice for these organizations is increasingly important. So you bring a key perspective there that organizations really need to be aware of and stay in touch with. I would also say heavy focus and orientation towards design and usability principles. That's something that we don't often get through the traditional side of our programs, although I think more and more programs are starting to bring that in. So if you think of some of the devices that we interact with and work with every day, they've really been designed and they've got a usability aesthetic to them that is far beyond what historically individuals have dealt with in terms of technology or interfaces that they're using. And most of the work that we're doing and IO psychology practitioners are doing, you're dropped into that same environment. So your work is to some extent in parallel with other highly designed interfaces. So I think it's important to think of that and bringing in those design skills with how you build and design and plan for interaction with the tools that you're putting in place. You can have the best content, the best testing items, for example, or the best survey items, but if it's delivered through a technology system that doesn't have a very positive user experience, you can actually end up getting a very negative impression of the overall process. So whether it be a hiring process or a survey or development tools, training tools that are being administered, perhaps they bring in multimedia or other uses of technology. Keeping that design mindset in mind, I think will be important. The other category I'd bring in is in terms of broader communication methods. One that I'd bring up is data visualization. So increasingly, with the complex amount of information that's flowing into everyone's lives, particularly in the workplace, there's a much broader range of individuals who are being asked to make decisions based on very complex information. And not all of those individuals, and in fact, most of those individuals don't have a heavily quantitative background. So visualization is a really emerging and growing and really interesting technique to represent complex information visually to allow us to take advantage of our very amazingly well-developed visual skills that process information faster than an Ethernet connection and at the resolution of a digital camera and at the speed of the blink of an eye. And so those visualization techniques can often be used to present information to a much broader audience than purely numerical forms of information can. I'd say going along with that is moving away from text-based presentations of information and bringing in a greater use of graphics, really trying to shift that ratio more towards graphics than text. Just recognizing that you're going to be talking to a much broader audience than those who may have a similar background as you and won't often have a technical background. So to get your ideas across, it's helpful to come up with ways to and to try out ways of presenting ideas to a non-technical audience. That's also where I'd bring in something like social media. If you think of a platform like Twitter, for example, where you can become much better calibrated through use of those social media technologies to what's a style and method and phrasing and framing for how you're presenting a message that will really draw in input and interest from a broader audience. So some of the new tools and methods, again, LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram, any of the social media networks, I think of it as a way to really get calibrated with how individuals from a broader set of perspectives, because in most cases you're presenting information out to the world, or at least a much bigger group of individuals than just that subset of people that you might interact with on a daily basis. What are they responding to? What are they following? What are they liking? What are they favoriting? So it provides a pretty substantial opportunity for us at any stage of our education to really calibrate our messaging to our intended audience and to find ways to use that as almost a form of experimentation for trying out different ways of presenting our ideas and seeing what types of uptake and influence and impact we can drive through the use of social media as one example of how I think our communication methods can continue to extend to meet the needs of a broader audience.
You know, I'd probably go back to the first question about why I got into industrial organizational psychology and you know, have you as students perhaps consider whether this might be the right domain for you. And I think the things that I see that stand out to me when I look at folks who've really enjoyed their career in industrial organizational psychology is, first of all, they love to understand people and human behavior. They just have a passion for it. The second thing is that they have applied interests. So in general, while there's a lot of theory in the work that we do, it's a high touch profession. We even when we gather data and test our theories, we are working closely with people. We're engaged with them. And so that, I think, is a second quality that is important for somebody who seeks to go into this domain. I think a third factor that really stands out to me is a passion for really understanding data and doing research and understanding what actually works in the workplace. What leads to better outcomes for employees. And probably a fourth thing would be, and this may be the thing that you really have to ask yourself, especially as a psychology student, is, am I passionate about organizations? Do I care about what makes an organization successful or not? As a profit-making business, do I care about how businesses make profit and the role that employees play in that? Or if you're working in a nonprofit, in a government sector, or an NGO or some other nonprofit sector, do I really want to understand what it takes to make that organization prosper? Where it gets its revenue, where it gets its funding from, the outputs that it's expected to produce. Do I really want to understand the organization as a system in addition to understanding people? Do I care about the organization's success from a business perspective? And I think, again, the best industrial organizational psychologists really do care about that. They want to understand business models and organizational models, as well as the nuts and bolts of IO psychology. So if this is something you're thinking about as a possible discipline for yourself, I'd encourage you to test yourself against those four things that I mentioned. See if they resonate for you. And if it is, I'd really encourage you to continue to explore industrial organizational psychology as a career option. It's one of the fastest growing professions in the country. There are, I think, wonderful people who are doing this work. It's a great profession to be in for people who really enjoy this type of work.
IO psychology is inherently so interesting and so important in terms of really addressing one of the most important parts of our day-to-day lives, and that's the workplace. So it's incredibly interesting. If you're able to figure that out now, when you still have a choice to make and you can go into IO psychology, I don't think you'll regret it. The people that I know who have pursued IO psychology are so excited that they found this field when they did. And it is becoming a really hot field as our workplace changes and we see more and more the evolution in how we do work. I think it's only going to increase in importance, but I would strongly encourage you, if this seems interesting to you, IO psychology is a great field to work in. It is constantly changing and interesting and so relevant to everyone, and it gives you a great conversation at the Thanksgiving dinner table. People always find it fascinating what you're studying.
If you're just beginning your education in IO psychology, I would say, looking back, taking advantage of any and all opportunities to increase your knowledge, to increase your understanding of either research, the science, or the practice side is important. Even if you've got a strong inclination that you want to go into the practice area, learn about the research, learn about the literature, learn about the science, because that helps you as a practitioner. Vice versa, if you want to be primarily a scientist, teaching, etc., learning about the practice issues can help you as well there. So I think my advice would be learn as much as you can about anything within the field. That's going to help you then make more informed and intentional choices about what you ultimately end up doing within the field.
I think it's a really vibrant career path. It's a path that, by all accounts, has lots of opportunity for jobs, and you do a lot of interesting things. It's also, work is for reasons that I've talked about before, the changing nature of work, the new technologies, the changing nature of the workforce, the globalization of the economy. all of these things are creating fascinating new problems that IO psychologists and work psychologists are providing help to organizations with, as well as to public policymakers as they try to understand how to make effective use and of their population, and also to enhance their well-being into later life.
It's important to be well-read and well-versed on the issues that are impacting organizations today, as well as society. So that does include topics such as technology and virtual work, and the on-demand economy as another example. We have so many things at our fingertips with smartphones, and healthcare as well is being changed. So I think really staying on top of these sorts of issues and thinking about how the world of work is going to be transformed in the next decade or so. We'll have people thinking about, they're trying to stay ahead of the curve and what that means in terms of research we should be doing, as well as the way we think about practice of IO psychology.